Hey guys, today I'm going to take you somewhere unexpected. You're standing beneath a night sky so clear, so ancient, it feels like the stars are blinking with purpose. Above you, the silhouette of Mount Olympus looms like the petrified spine of a forgotten titan. You tilt your head back, and for a moment, just a moment, you swear the stars above the peak shift ever so slightly, forming a familiar shape you can't quite name. Maybe it's the geometry of a lost symbol, or maybe it's just your imagination, responding to something it doesn't understand. Your boots crunch softly over dusty stone as you walk past the remnants of a Doric column. The marble is cold beneath your fingertips, but it pulses faintly. Or maybe that's your own pulse echoing back. Carved into the surface, half hidden under centuries of moss and erosion, is a glyph glowing faintly blue, like someone took a fiber optic cable and buried it in myth. Careful though, by the end, you might never see history the same way again. So before we descend into this strange story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if ancient secrets and cosmic questions are your thing. Drop your current location and time in the comments. I want to know where on Earth or beyond you're watching from. Now, take a breath, clear your mind, and let's unlock the myths that may never have been myths at all. You climb higher, the air thins, and as you reach the peak of Olympus, something odd happens. You don't feel proud, you feel watched. Mainstream archaeology will tell you Olympus was just a symbolic home for Greek gods, a mountaintop metaphor for unreachable power. But you're not here for metaphors, you're here for patterns, and Olympus is full of them. First, the mountain summit isn't a summit, it's a flattened plateau, almost like it was modified. Second, it aligns with star clusters, with solstices, with something. The ancients couldn't have measured those alignments so precisely without tools we only developed in the last few centuries. Historians still argue whether Greek astronomers were advanced beyond their time or just really good guessers. But you're thinking, what if they were guided? That brings us to the real mystery. Olympus is less a mountain of gods and more a geometric key. You step back and look at topographical maps. The outcrops form near-perfect vectors pointing towards specific constellations, Lyra, Draco, and most notably, Orion. Now, Orion's belt is just 3 stars to most of us, but ancient cultures across the planet have built monuments aligned with it. And Olympus? It's like the trigger mechanism of a cosmic compass designed to lock onto those same stars. You run your fingers over the stone again. That faint blue glyph pulses just once. Now, here is where it gets weirder. In 1972, during an atmospheric sweep over Greece, NASA satellites picked up a heat signature under Olympus. Not volcanic, not geothermal, patterned, as if a structured energy source was buried there, intact. The data was classified. The public never told. Not even a press release about soil anomalies. But someone noticed. That same year, several high-altitude pilots flying over northern Greece reported brief blackouts in communication, instruments jumping, and, my favorite, a silver disc resting below the summit that winked out before radar could confirm. You want a break from reality? Here it is. There are rumors, buried in declassified memos and redacted emails, that the ancients didn't just build temples on Olympus, they sealed something in it. The myth of the Titanomachy, the gods locking the old titans away in Tartarus, what if it's not about morality at all, but containment? And the gate, it was part of that containment. Now pause. Let's not get too ancient aliens just yet. There's a real debate among scholars, serious ones, about whether the Mount Olympus worship was astral in nature, that it wasn't about the mountain itself, but what passed through it. The temples weren't homes, they were beacons. Which brings us to one overlooked structure, the small shrine at the western base of Olympus, mostly rubble now, but underneath, ground-penetrating radar has shown metallic anomalies in hexagonal patterns, not Roman, not Byzantine, and too deep to be modern. We're talking almost 100 feet down. Nothing built should have survived that deep, that long. But something did, and the geometry? It matches modular space frame architecture, the kind we only started using in satellite housing in the last 50 years. And here is where our non-human friends quietly step into frame. Local legends speak of the astri, light-skinned beings from beyond the mountain's breath who emerged during solar storms to whisper secrets to priests and vanish when the sun returned. They weren't gods, they weren't men, they were messengers. Some say they didn't age, some say they walked without touching the ground, and some say they left behind a door, not a metaphorical one, a real one. You glance back up at the summit, what's glowing isn't your imagination, and what's humming in the back of your skull, that's not altitude sickness, that's recognition, because Olympus isn't a myth, it's a map, and the coordinates, they lead somewhere deeper.
You descend, not down Olympus, but deeper, into the forgotten bones of Greece. The road coils past sleepy villages and crumbling olive groves until you stand before a place older than most gods, Delphi. To tourists, it's ruins. To historians, it's the oracle seat. But to you, it's a puzzle box with one piece still pulsing. You step into the sanctuary of Apollo, where pillars lean like drunks and shadows always fall a little too long. You remember that blue glyph from Olympus. One fragment of it is etched here too, barely visible, tucked beneath the navel stone, the omphalos, said to mark the center of the world. But what if it wasn't metaphor? What if it was a literal access point? Delphi, you soon realize, isn't random. It's not even primarily religious. It's aligned geodetically with fault lines, magnetic anomalies, and most importantly, subterranean architecture. You follow your gut and a few blurry translations of Pythian hymns and sneak behind a collapsed alcove. You light your way with your phone, but soon the screen glitches, buzzes, flickers. You're underground now, and the air hums. Not wind, not machines. Frequency. It trembles in your molars. The tunnel walls are smooth, not carved by hand, but vitrified, melted. The kind of stonework you'd expect from a laser, not a chisel. Historians chalk it up to seismic heat damage, but one rogue geologist in the 80s called it structural radiation blistering. He died 2 weeks after publishing. Car crash, no photos. At the bottom of the slope, you find it. A door. Not wood, not marble. A translucent panel, circular, pulsing faintly like breath under skin. Etched across its face is a spiral of triangles, the same pattern seen in Mayan temples, Dogon star maps, and allegedly inside the Roswell debris. But here, it's pristine, undisturbed. You reach out, and as your hand nears, the panel shivers, and from behind it, you feel something blink. Let's rewind. Delphi was built on a fissure. The Pythia, the high priestess oracle, sat above that fissure and inhaled vapors to induce her visions. Science says those fumes were ethylene gas, but you've read the journals. Some of those visions describe things that didn't make sense in ancient times. Flying chariots without horses, voice boxes that echoed with no source, a man with metal skin and light for eyes. One account, long dismissed, describes a silver child who knew the names of every star, appearing in the chamber and then vanishing when the fissure hummed with blue fire. You start to piece it together. This wasn't just a ritual. It was communication. Delphi wasn't a temple. It was a receiver. And that fissure? It wasn't just geological. It was a conduit. Now pause again, because the Greeks weren't subtle about divine tech. Hermes had a rod that healed and controlled minds. Hello, nanotech and EM modulation. Athena sprang fully formed from Zeus's head. Sure, or maybe that's a metaphor for synthetic intelligence. And Hephaestus, a god who worked with molten metal and built machines that walked. But you're underground now, and none of it feels like metaphor. A shimmer passes through the panel, and on the other side, just for an instant, you see it. Not a figure, not exactly, more like a presence outlined in arcs of light, like the reflection of a being that exists half in your world, half in another. Limbs bend at angles you can't trace. Its face shifts depending on how you look at it. Serpentine, then human, then blank entirely. Your vision pulses, the floor vibrates, and somewhere behind you, a whisper echoes. Not yet. The panel goes dark. You stagger back dizzy and bump into a stone pedestal. On it, a broken sculpture of a woman's face, worn smooth by time, but her eyes, still intact, and they're looking up. You stumble out into the light. Air, birds, wind. You expected relief. Instead, you feel incomplete. Back on the surface, you visit Delphi's museum. Hidden in a dusty corner is a bronze plate cataloged simply as untranslated. But the shape? Same spiral triangle motif, except now there's an added ring, orbiting symbols, almost like a dial. You take a photo, your phone flickers again, and right then, across the valley, light flashes. Not from the sun, from the mountainside. You follow it. Tucked into a cliff, there's a square pit, sealed with concrete. Official record says it's a disused seismic monitoring station, but the documents are thin, too thin. No construction photos, no maintenance reports. Locals say men in white suits came here once. Not scientists, not soldiers. Something else. One boy, now an old man, swears he saw them unloading spherical crates that floated slightly off the ground. When he got close, one of the men looked at him. He still has nightmares about that face. Eyes black and oval, skin like thin pearl, a voice in his head that whispered in perfect Greek, "Close the gate. They know we failed." He never came back to the mountain. But you just did. You look down at the sealed pit. You see the glyph burned faintly into the rock beside it, and you realize this wasn't just an oracle site. This was a launch pad, or an anchor point, or something we don't even have words for yet. And it's not dormant. It's waiting.
You return to the surface, changed. Delphi's shadows have followed you, stitched to your thoughts like something not quite left behind. But the deeper mystery waits elsewhere, in a place history almost forgot, a coastal research base, once touched by NASA, now vanished from every public record. A classified atmospheric anomaly prompted a joint mission between NASA and the Hellenic National Observatory. The stated objective? Ionization irregularities in the Eastern Mediterranean. But those close to the project whispered of something stranger, data showing localized gravitational anomalies near Greece's western mountains. You follow a trail of decommissioned launch manifests, odd travel lobs, and the deep web's ghost of a mission called Chroma 9. No official photos, no scientific papers, just one entry from a leaked audio transcript between two technicians. "We're not testing the portal again until the construct stabilizes. I told you it's not a construct, it's responding." Responding to what? You track their last known location, an abandoned complex near the cliffs of Meteora.
From a distance, it looks like nothing. Cracked concrete, rusted antennas, and a collapsed satellite dish like a fallen crown. But inside, it's still alive. Dust stirs in perfect circles. Every electronic device you carry dies at the threshold. No birds, no wind, just silence thick enough to chew. And then, without warning, you hear it. A low thrumming sound, not through your ears, but through your spine. You follow it down a ruined hallway, past scorched metal walls and glyphs scratched in haste. These aren't ancient, they're fresh, and they match what you saw in Delphi. But there's something else. A recording unit, miraculously intact. You play it, static, then voices. Panicked, scientific, and then terrified. Readings are spiking again. It's looking at me. Oh my God! Shut it down! Shut it down! The tape cuts off. You sit in the dark, the glow of your backup light revealing a wall covered in sketches of stars, of gates, of beings. Some resemble classical depictions of Greek gods, others do not. One in particular catches your breath, an entity drawn in radiant arcs labeled simply the Architect. No face, just eyes, wide, silver, emotionless. And behind it, a gate, open, with figures spilling through. You begin to connect the final pieces. The entire mission, Chroma 9, wasn't about atmospheric studies. It was about reopening a portal, something the ancients had shut for a reason. And they succeeded. Sort of. The final report, what little of it remains, describes temporal warping, entity bleed-through, and loss of anchor. The gate opened, but what came through wasn't meant for this world, or maybe it once was but had evolved, mutated, lost its compassion. Out of 11 researchers, only 2 made it back. One vanished 6 months later. The other? He changed his name, moved to a monastery in Thessaloniki. You find him, old, slow, eyes flickering with galaxies he won't describe. You ask him what happened. He tells you this. It wasn't just a door. It was an eye, and it looked back. Then he draws something on the table in ash, a spiral of triangles, the same symbol, the same gate. And you ask the final question. Why Greece? Why Olympus, Delphi, Meteora? He smiles. Because we weren't the first to open it. We were the last to forget. And then he tells you about the visitors. He calls them the luminous, not gods, not devils, engineers of consciousness. They taught in riddles, he says. They encoded frequencies into myth, seeded truth inside symbolism. And when humanity stopped listening, they left. But not before sealing the gate behind them with a warning. Do not open what cannot love you back. And yet, here we are. One final detail sticks with you. A photo he shows you, aged and stained, a stone chamber, circular, humming with violet light. In the center, a disc floating. Barely visible within it, a silhouette. You zoom in. Not human. Tall, elongated skull, veins of blue fire beneath translucent skin, a face like still water and nightmares. Its hand raised, not in threat, in farewell.
You sit now under a very different sky. The stars haven't moved, but your eyes have changed. Olympus isn't just a mountain. Delphi isn't just a ruin. They're echoes of a conversation we interrupted or forgot. Maybe the myths weren't inventions. Maybe they were interfaces, designed to filter truth through language we could survive. Maybe every temple was a user manual.
And maybe we've spent the last 2,000 years ignoring it, staring at broken columns and asking the wrong questions. Because if the ancients did speak with gods, what if those gods were never omnipotent, but architects of transit, of memory, of dimensional keys? And what if the thing we buried wasn't a threat, but a mirror? The gate may be sealed. The Stargate beneath the mountain may hum silently for eternity. But now you've heard it, you've seen the glyphs, you felt the whisper in your bones. And part of you won't sleep quite the same tonight. You'll look at the stars and wonder if one of them is looking back. You'll wonder if Delphi still listens. You'll wonder what Olympus is waiting for. And you might start to suspect that the greatest cover-up wasn't hiding technology. It was hiding belonging. Maybe tonight the stars aren't looking down. Maybe they're waiting for someone to look back.